Every now and then, something comes along that is just so good, so iconic, it becomes untouchable. The gold standard. For decades, the MP5 was this something. It wasn't just a submachine gun, it was the submachine gun. It was the GOAT. Iconic, reliable, and practically worshipped by anyone who's ever shot, held, or even seen one in a movie. The H&K MP5 has been reigning supreme for nearly 50 years. And that is basically where the APC9 story begins. And if you've ever wondered what the difference was between an APC9 Gen 1 and an APC9 Pro, or you just really love B&Ts, then sit back, relax, because at the end of this video, you'll never have problems identifying an APC9 ever again. The B&T APC9 was first designed sometime in the mid-2000s. B&T's founder Carl Brugger noticed that there was a void in the subgun market of 9mm and 45 caliber PDWs. The company outlook was that it would be a fun exercise to design a high-quality, modern, price-competitive submachine gun in 9mm. And little did they know that the seeds they were planting would soon become the APC9 Pro, the modern masterpiece that finally dethrones the king. The APC9 Gen 1 is a compact 9mm submachine gun with a machined aluminum upper receiver and a polymer lower receiver. It uses proprietary magazines that were originally designed for the MP9 after B&T purchased the Strayer TMP patent. The Gen 1 also does not accommodate other magazine types, FYI. You need to get a new lower and modify the bolt. Okay, let's get into some specs. The APC9 is 15.9 inches long folded and 23.5 inches long when fully extended with both the ump and the telescoping stock, and it weighs in at 5.5 pounds with the ump stock. It has a 6.9 inch cold hammer forged barrel with a tri-lug for quick attachment of suppressors and muzzle devices. The Gen 1 has a reciprocating side charge handle that can be swapped to either side, and it operates using a direct blowback that's assisted by a hydraulic buffer system to aid in the recoil impulse. And now, we're going to get into the takedown. The APC9 Gen 1 uses two HK-style takedown pins to attach the lower to the upper receiver. They're contained in the lower receiver using two springs. The stock assembly holds the hydraulic buffer, and it can be removed from the upper just by pulling down on the stock assembly with the lower removed. The recoil spring is contained, and it holds the charge handle inside the bolt. The bolt slides out of the back of the receiver once you index the hole on the receiver with the charge handle and pull it out. Okay, now we're going to get into how to spot a true Gen 1. You got to look at the charge handle. It's going to be attached directly to the bolt. This is how you can spot a reciprocating charge handle. And on the Pro, there's going to be dual side folding charge handles that are non-reciprocating, and they're attached to a polymer sled in front of the bolt, and there's a retaining lug used to secure the bolt. As far as stocks, you really can't use that as an indicator of what gen it is, because they originally came with the ump style stock or a telescoping stock, and since then they've been changed a few times, currently landing on the MBT folding stock that is also telescoping with a comb adjustment. And it also includes QD ports. It's kind of like B&T's SCAR style stock, and it's been nicknamed the UGG boot due to its side profile looking like, you guessed it, a boot. Okay, I digress. Back to the Gen 1 traits. A true Gen 1 is going to have these polymer flip-up irons integrated into the rail. They flip up out of the Picatinny rail front and back, and although they're quite primitive and easily broken, the thought process behind these, according to B&T, is that they provide a built-in backup that's cheap and easy to replace. And they are just that. I don't think I've ever seen a replacement Gen 1 set of sights anywhere on the internet, so be careful not to break yours like I almost did here. Now, there are some nuances to spotting the generation of an APC9. It's not exactly just cut and dry, because APC9 did go through a slow evolution. It wasn't just a change all at once. You'll find reciprocating upper guns without these irons built in. You will see reciprocating upper guns with the Pro lower, and you can even buy the folding charge handle for the Gen 1, so it gets confusing. Other ways to differentiate between the Gen 1 and the Pro are on the trunnion area. The Gen 1 has 4 torque heads on a diamond pattern, and the charge handle groove ends just before the rear torque screw. The Pro is missing a torque screw, and they're in the shape of a V because the charge handle groove runs all the way to where the barrel vents start. And if you look at the front of the receiver on the APC9 Pro, you can see there is a polymer sled visible, where the Gen 1, this area is completely completely empty above the barrel. This sled houses the dual non-reciprocating charge handles, and that sled actually pushes the bolt when the charge handle gets charged. So aside from the Gen 1 being marked with the SA denomination for Swiss arms, we've basically covered all the differences on the Gen 1 upper receiver. Which brings us to the lower receiver. The most obvious thing you're going to notice is going to be the fact that the pistol grip is integrated into the lower, compared to the Pro lower, which allows you to swap out for any AR grip. And while I'm at that subject, if you plan on getting a B&T and swapping out the grip, be sure to add 2 small washers, because there's a well-known issue regarding the lower receivers getting broken from over-tightening the screw, because the screws are too long and they jam into the polymer above and they break the grip. And speaking of which, it's probably a good time for a ruthless plug of my aluminum versus polymer B&T lower video. Check that out for yourself and find out if that is an upgrade that you think is worth it. Okay, back to the Gen 1. The last but not least most identifying feature, quite possibly the quirkiest of all the quirks and not necessarily the most intuitive feature, but still one of my favorites nonetheless, under magwell bolt hold. Yes, you heard that right. The Gen 1 APC9 has an M4 style button to release the bolt and a separate button behind the magwell to make it hold. And although it's usable, it does take some getting used to, and you can see on the Pro version where they left a little recessed hole where the button would have been. It kind of reminds me what it must be like if you get the 2-wheel drive version of a 4-wheel drive car and you have that blank button there and you're wondering what it is. As far as the inside, you're going to be hard-pressed to find any difference that doesn't pertain to the non-reciprocating charge handles other than the feed ramp, which has been altered to accept the Glock and the P320 mags, but everything else is basically the same from the Pro to the Gen 1. As far as ergonomics on the Gen 1 are concerned, it's very nice. The handle is a little bit blocky. It's quite square, so it's easy to index. It's a little bit smaller and a little bit less vertical than what a lot of people would like. I personally like the size. It could use a steeper angle, but it is an iconic gun. The way it looks, as is, love it. The ergonomics on the charge handle, it does get really close to your hand. It's moving back and forth really fast, and when you're gripping at the magwell, it's literally at the palm of your hand, and I could see possibly causing malfunctions, and it does stick out, so it has more of a tendency to stick on your clothing. I notice it more when I'm trying to take a picture of it, or when I'm putting it in a case, or laying it down on the floor. It just doesn't lay down on that side right, but it is movable from the left to the right. If you want to do that HK slap, like over and under style, like an AK, you can do that. You can also force the bolt into battery manually, so it has some pluses and some minuses. I just want to touch upon reliability right now. We have this 150,000 round example that was actually purchased back off of the range that owned it by B&T, and they traded them APC9 Pro because they wanted to use this gun as a research gun. I'm going to pull it up on the screen. It is pretty wild. They say all that they really had to change is some small parts like firing pins and extractors and ejectors and stuff, so pretty impressive. 150,000 rounds, still working. And you can see there's quite a bit of ejection port wear, but this is still a very, very usable gun with lots of life left. So in 2018, the US Army held a subcompact weapons trial program, and this allowed weapon manufacturers to put platforms up for a large contract, 350 initial submachine guns. With feedback from operators of the Gen 1 platform of the APC9, B&T redesigned the platform specifically for the SCW trial. B&T ended up winning this trial, and in 2019, the APC9 and the APC9K were released to the public. They pretty much garnered a cult-like following almost immediately, even winning out the hearts of many HK MP5 purists. So that about wraps up the Gen 1 APC9 video. I'm going to do an APC9 Pro versus APC9 Gen 1 video as well, so hopefully if there's something that I missed, can you let me know in the comments, and I'll make sure I get it in that video. Oh, and by the way, YouTube keeps on giving me these random strikes for like videos that I deleted already, or videos that I got a strike on and I appealed and won the appeal. So they don't like gun channels. Give me a like, subscribe, help me grow this shit. Peace.